I am 81 years old, and that night I walked into the room wearing a simple jacket that had seen better decades, shoes that didn't shine, and a posture that came not from weakness, but from years of carrying life on my back. And nobody looked twice at me, which was exactly the point. Because for most of my life, I learned that true power does not announce itself. It observes, it listens, it waits. And as I entered that party filled with polished smiles, loud laughter, expensive watches, and people competing over who had the better story, the better title, the better car parked outside, I realized how desperately people try to be seen, especially when they feel empty inside. And I took my seat quietly at the edge of the room, holding a plain glass of water while others waved champagne. And I watched how age makes some people louder and others wiser. Because while they spoke about money, I understood value. While they chased attention, I carried peace. And while they tried to prove something, I had nothing left to prove. Because I had already lived long enough to know that pretending to be poor is not deception. It is freedom. Freedom from expectations, freedom from envy, freedom from shallow respect that disappears the moment your usefulness fades. And as I sat there, listening to conversations that sounded important but meant nothing, I thought about how many years it took me to understand that the richest man in the room is rarely the one people admire at first glance. It is the one who does not need admiration at all. And at 81, I had already buried friends who chased money and died exhausted. I had seen marriages collapse under the weight of pride. I had watched strong men become bitter because they measured their worth by applause. And I had promised myself long ago that if I ever reached this age, I would arrive with humility, not hunger, and patience, not ego. Because real wealth is quiet. It doesn't interrupt conversations, it doesn't brag, it doesn't post, it doesn't compare, it simply exists. And when someone at that party asked me what I did for a living, I smiled gently and said, I lived, and they laughed politely, assuming I was just another old man with nothing left to offer. Not knowing that I had built businesses from nothing, lost them, rebuilt them, learned from failure, invested in people when it mattered, walked away from deals that smelled wrong, and protected my integrity even when it cost me money, because I learned early that wealth without peace is poverty in disguise. And as the night went on, I watched people drink more to feel important, talk louder to feel noticed, and interrupt each other to feel superior. And I realized that pretending to be poor was the greatest luxury I had ever owned, because it filtered out the noise, it revealed character, and it reminded me of who I was before success tried to define me. And I remembered the days when I actually was poor, when hunger taught me discipline, when silence taught me observation, when struggle taught me patience, and when failure taught me humility. And those lessons stayed with me far longer than money ever did, because money comes and goes, but character compounds. And as I listened to younger men boasting about investments they didn't understand and women comparing lifestyles they couldn't maintain, I felt no anger, no envy, only clarity, because time strips illusions. And at 81, you don't compete anymore. You conserve, you simplify, you protect your energy, you speak less and see more. And that is why I didn't correct anyone when they assumed I was struggling, because struggle taught me everything I needed to know to succeed. And I didn't need to announce my bank balance to feel worthy, because my worth had already been paid in decades of discipline, sacrifice, restraint, and choices made when no one was watching. And that night, sitting quietly, I understood something even deeper, that the real test of success is not what you accumulate, but what you can walk away from without resentment. And I had walked away from greed, from validation, from the need to impress, and from the pressure to explain myself. And that made me lighter than anyone else in that room. And when someone joked that I must be there as someone's guest, I nodded and smiled, because ego is loud, but wisdom is calm. And I didn't come to the party to be recognized. I came to observe humanity in its natural habitat, performing, posturing, proving, while I rested comfortably in anonymity, knowing that the greatest advantage age gives you is perspective. The ability to see patterns, to read people before they speak, to understand motives behind smiles, and to know when silence is stronger than any response. And as the music played and the laughter grew, I realized that at 81, Pretending to be poor was not about hiding wealth. It was about revealing truth. Because when people think you have nothing, they show you who they really are. And when they think you are powerful, they show you who they pretend to be. And I had no interest in pretenders anymore. I had already earned the right to live quietly, to enjoy simple things, to sleep without anxiety, to wake without urgency, and to measure my days not by income, but by peace, health, and clarity. And that night, surrounded by people chasing status, I felt richer than I ever had, not because of money, but because I was free from the need to chase anything at all. And I knew that the greatest victory of my life was not financial success, but the ability to sit in a room full of noise and remain unshaken, unseen, and completely fulfilled. Because at 81, I finally understood that real wealth is invisible to those who are still trying to buy it. As the night continued, and the party slowly reached that point where conversations became repetitive and laughter grew louder but emptier, I noticed something subtle happening inside me, a calm certainty settling in, because while others were trying to impress strangers they would forget by morning, I was quietly aware that I had already won a game most people never realize they are playing, the game of patience, restraint, and long vision. And eventually the host made a casual announcement about a new investment opportunity, something flashy, something designed to spark excitement. And suddenly the room leaned forward, voices sharpened, eyes widened, and I watched how quickly desperation dresses itself as ambition. And one by one, people spoke up, trying to position themselves, to be seen, to be remembered. And when my turn came, the room barely paused, because no one expected the quiet old man in the corner to have anything meaningful to say. And that was when I understood that age gives you one final gift if you use it correctly, the power to speak without needing approval. So I spoke slowly, not to dominate the room, but to anchor it, and I said only what needed to be said, that wealth without wisdom collapses, that speed without direction leads nowhere, and that anyone who has never lost everything has not yet learned how fragile success really is. And the room fell quieter than I expected, not because I was loud, but because truth does not need volume. And in that silence I saw something change, not admiration, but curiosity. The kind that comes when people sense depth they do not understand. And later, as small groups formed again, a few people approached me privately, asking questions they wouldn't dare ask out loud, about longevity, about regret, about what really matters when you reach this age. And I realized that pretending to be poor had once again revealed something priceless. People stop performing and start confessing when they think you have nothing to gain from them. And one man admitted he was exhausted chasing relevance. Another confessed he feared aging more than failure. And a woman quietly asked how to stop feeling invisible after 60. And I answered them not with advice, but with perspective. Because advice fades, but perspective stays. And I told them that at some point in life, you must decide whether you want to spend your remaining years proving something to others or protecting something within yourself. And that choice determines whether old age becomes a burden or a privilege. And as the night ended and people began to leave, shaking hands, exchanging numbers, making promises they wouldn't keep, I walked out the same way I came in, unnoticed, unbothered, unhurried, and outside in the quiet air, I reflected on the long road that brought me here, the decades of discipline when no one clapped, the mornings when progress felt invisible, the sacrifices that never made headlines, and the moments when I chose integrity over shortcuts. And I realized that what made me the richest person at that party was not my bank accounts, but the fact that I had already paid the price most people are still avoiding. The price of patience, consistency, self-control, and humility. And that is the message I want you to hear if you are listening to this now, especially if you are over 60, over 70, or even over 80, because society will tell you that your best years are behind you, that you should slow down, step aside, and fade quietly. But the truth is this: your greatest power at this age is clarity, and clarity is worth more than strength, speed, or status, because clarity allows you to see what matters and what doesn't, who deserves your energy and who doesn't, what is worth fighting for and what is finally safe to let go. And if you feel invisible, understand this: invisibility is not weakness, It is camouflage. It gives you the freedom to observe, to choose wisely, and to move without interference. And if you feel underestimated, let that become your advantage, because nothing sharpens focus like being ignored, and nothing builds quiet confidence like knowing you don't need validation anymore. And if you're struggling financially, emotionally, or physically at this stage of life, do not mistake your situation for your value, because value is not measured by what you display, but by what you endure and what you protect. And I want you to remember that pretending to be poor is not about lying to the world. It is about refusing to let the world define you. It is about choosing simplicity over noise, peace over performance, and purpose over pride. And whether you have money or not, health or not, recognition or not, you can still live rich by guarding your time, honoring your word, strengthening your body as best you can, and training your mind to stay calm under pressure. Because the strongest people are not the loudest, they are the most grounded, and the wealthiest people are not the flashiest, they are the most content. And as I stand here at 81, looking back without bitterness and forward without fear, I can tell you this with certainty. Life rewards those who stay disciplined when no one is watching, who stay humble when success arrives, and who stay resilient when age tries to convince them they are finished. Because you are not finished, not even close, as long as you wake up willing to learn, to adapt, and to choose strength over surrender. And if this message resonates with you, if it reminds you that you still matter, that your journey still counts, and that your quiet strength is your greatest asset, then walk forward with confidence. Simplify your life, protect your energy, train your body gently but consistently, feed your mind with truth, and never let the noise of the world make you forget how far you have already come. Because the richest person in any room is not the one with the most money, but the one with the most peace. And that kind of wealth, once earned, can never be taken away. And if you found strength in these words today, take a moment to support this channel, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Daily Path to Strength. Because this path is not about proving yourself to the world. It is about becoming unshakable within it.